They're from Hong Kong. In Hong Kong, for the last generation,
I'm
you have a choice.
BaaaackMotel.com, the Republican candidate for
I
governor.
did not have sexual relations
And
with
I
that woman.
realized that this is something
Miss
he
Lewinsky.
is
We're not going to
inherent.
be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Hey, good morning, Clevelanders. Welcome to Backfire this morning. Nice little rainy morning going on outside. Should keep things cooled off today, I hope, especially here in Backfire.
Well, it's been, I think, the coolest June in years. I guess that global warming's not working out too good.
I don't know. I think it's going to rain on the global warming today. What do you think, Franklin?
Well, today it's going to, for sure.
We have John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey here with us this morning, and we're going to have another hour-long conversation about all the things going on around the country. Let's start by Mr. Obama's visit to Chattanooga yesterday. Big news, big news, big news. Why do you think he picked Chattanooga?
I think he's made an effort to go to red parts of the country in order to present some of these ideas.
He didn't go to Detroit. He didn't think about going there, did he?
We went to Florida, was one of them, that part of Florida.
Wonder why he went to Amazon. He didn't really have anything to do with Amazon, did he?
Jeff Bezos, the president of Amazon's a huge supporter of the president.
Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't, Obama didn't have anything to do with getting.
Oh, he didn't help make them successful at all. Every reason they chose to come to Chattanooga in the state of Tennessee for is the exact opposite of the economic principles the president has pushed.
Well, the problem is that with that statement is that it ignores the economic reality, which is that Tennessee provided all kinds of economic incentives for Amazon to come here, and Tennessee is one of the taker states that gets a lot more from the federal government than it puts into it.
Well, I'm sorry.
Some of that money actually ended up.
I'm sorry that we're smarter than the other states.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that is that the vast majority of the states that fall into that category are all these red states who say they want to cut back the federal government.
Part of the economic incentives that you're talking
benefits.
about, though, Franklin, are the fact that we're a low regulation state, we're a low tax state, we're a workers' rights state where we don't have forced unionization. That's why we attract these businesses.
Right. We're also a state where workers have no job security whatsoever.
They have plenty of job security.
They don't.
Yes, they do. Here's job security in the traditional history of the world. Do a good job and you have job security.
Guess what, John? I see these folks come into my office all the time who've been let go because their supervisor doesn't like them. Not because they've ever created any problem on the job or they haven't done their job.
What do you do when they come to you with that problem?
I tell them exactly what John just told them.
What's
and I'm
that?
sorry, there's not a thing that can be done about it, that you have no protection.
I'm sorry, Franklin. I tell my kids things like, hey, make sure the boss likes you. Get along with the boss. Because guess what? He's the boss. Life's hard.
Not saying it's not hard, John. I'm
Well,
just
once
telling
the
you that
government
there are a
gets
lot
involved,
of people. There are
this-
a lot of people out there
This president
who are
has
honorable people,
Franklin,
who have a good work ethic,
Right.
who want to work, and sometimes they get a raw deal for no reason at all.
In this president's term, 5 years going on now, those same people have seen their income drop while Wall Street big fat cats have seen their income go up around 16% under this president.
Yes.
Unfortunately, he still doesn't take credit for his first term.
And your response to that is that what we should do is cut taxes on the people who made the 16% profit.
You're missing the point. I'm not cutting taxes on them. I'm cutting taxes on the businesses that employ all these people.
Who do you think those people are?
They employ everyone, Franklin. This president's policies have failed.
The president just proposed cutting those taxes, John.
He proposed cutting those taxes while at the same time saying we're not going to give any of this money back to the taxpayer. We're going to spend every dime on it on the same kind of failed stimulus that he spent it on 4 years ago, which has produced nothing.
Except that every economist who looks at this disputes everything you just said.
Well, Franklin,
even the conservative economists admit that the stimulus helped stop the economy's free fall.
Franklin,
They admit it.
How
You
do
know it's
How do you
true.
admit that when nobody's working? It hasn't helped anybody.
You just said Tennessee's this mecca for job creation.
Tennessee is getting it, but overall in the
Guess
country,
what?
nobody is working.
That's another example of where you spout off these myths that don't have any reality attached to them. Tennessee's unemployment rate is a full point higher than the rest of the nation's.
You're right.
But you say, oh, well, we know how to do things.
We are ranked one of the best states in the nation for businesses coming. How much higher would our employment be if we hadn't attracted Amazon, if we hadn't attracted VW? And by the way, Steve, don't miss the coincidence of the UAW upcoming vote for Volkswagen. You want to know why the president came to Chattanooga? Because the unions are failing once again to get any traction to vote themselves into the VW plant, so they called in the big dog to bring a lot of pressure and a lot of light to the Volkswagen
if that were the
area.
case, why wasn't he going to the VW plant?
Because
Don?
that would have been too obvious.
Too obvious.
It says here that he stayed clear of the Volkswagen
Yeah,
plant.
he didn't
By
go
the
down
way,
there.
Franklin, if you adjust for the labor participation rate, which has fallen under this president's term, if you adjust for that, the actual unemployment, the U3 unemployment, not the U6, but the U3 is 9.77%. So if we had the same amount of people working when this president, actually not even when he started, but in the middle of the height of the recession, if we had the 65% participation rate we had then, the unemployment rate right now would actually be just barely under 10%. This president's policies have failed.
What would it have been, John, without any of those policies?
Well, gee, how do you prove a negative, Franklin?
Oh, I don't know.
So in other words,
we
this
could,
guy's
we could
such a
try
screw
applying
up. What we say
economics,
is,
this
if
course
we
all
hadn't
took in
done what he
college.
wanted, it would. You
All
know,
right.
I tell you what, Franklin. Here's how we prove it. We take him at his own word. He said if he put his policies in place, which were put in place, unemployment would be below 8% 3 years ago. 3 years ago. He failed by his own metrics. So I'm not holding him to anything but his own metrics.
Let's right here is the Obama plan. Cut the corporate income tax to 28% for most businesses. Now, how do you do most businesses? And 25% for manufacturers. Expand community college training programs and create 45 manufacturing innovation institutes over 10 years. Eliminate tax loopholes and send jobs overseas. Convene CEOs to find better ways to train and rehire long-term unemployed people. Increase the minimum age. Increase investments and incentives for clean energy projects, including
You mean
money.
preferred businesses that Obama likes.
Yes, and carbon capture technology. Simplify the tax code for small businesses and eliminate many current exemptions. Now, if that is a plan, I've got some land in Florida I need to sell.
Well, it is a plan, and what's interesting about it, let me read you something else. Let me read you a quote from the paper this morning.
Which one?
Let me read the quote first. Let me read it here.
Okay.
We need some kind of grand bargain. This excessive polarization is a cancer. We have got to come together as a people. He said the president is trying to stimulate jobs and is proposing a fair deal. Everyone has to give something, he said. Compromise has to happen.
What is he giving?
Hold on, let me finish,
He's
John.
spending
Let me
every
finish.
dime that he gets.
I know you
on
don't
new
want me to
projects.
identify
I'm
who
just
said
asking
that.
what the president's
Who was it,
giving.
Zach Wamp?
What's
Zach
his
Wamp.
compromise?
Zach Wamp.
What is the president's compromise?
Well, let's go through that plan right now.
Well, let me give you
Hold
one.
on, hold on.
I'll
Let-
give
you
something
asked me the
I'm
question,
giving
let me
you the
answer it.
plan. I'm going to tell you something in the plan. A big thing in the plan is introducing a new minimum tax on international corporations' foreign earnings. Here's the problem with that. The plan to introduce this new minimum tax ignores a recommendation of Obama's own job council, which suggested exempting foreign incomes from taxation if it was repatriated. His own jobs council recommended against what he's proposing.
That's not accurate, what you just said, John.
They recommended
I'm
exempting.
not
I mean,
saying
he's
that's
putting,
wrong, but what you're doing
What,
is
you just
comparing
said it-
apples
wait a
to
minute,
oranges
Franklin,
again.
You just said what I said was wrong, but then you said it's not wrong.
Your linkage of those two things is
Did
incorrect,
his
John.
jobs council recommend exempting them?
Yes, but
Is
his
he
plan
exempting
that
them?
just
Is
said-
he exempting them? No.
Repatriated income is a different thing from earnings later on. That's not what he's talking about, John.
Foreign income.
That's already earned money, John.
Franklin,
not new earnings.
This guy is such a dunce on economics. If you do that, these companies will just shut down over here.
This is a
they will
perfect
actually
example
move.
again.
No, Franklin, what they'll do is they'll move out of the U.S. market.
Take
if
a
you
deep
tax
breath,
them
John.
that way, they will close more plants and they will move more jobs overseas.
Except that manufacturers have been moving jobs back to America the
Until
last 3
he
years,
does
haven't
this,
they?
and
Haven't
then
they?
this guy is an
Haven't they,
economic
John?
dunce.
Under his policies, manufacturers have been moving jobs back to America. Isn't that true?
Eliminate
Some
tax
areas
loopholes.
haven't seen increase and some have seen decreases.
Here's the problem. As you hear me point out week after week after week, whenever the president proposes something that previously has been championed by Republicans, suddenly it's radical left-wing socialism.
Franklin, he hasn't proposed anything. When he was specifically asked to put a price tag on his plan, they refused. And even the Washington Post has said this is not a proposal. It's not anything new.
And as the president pointed out, your party immediately rejects anything that the president proposes, so he's given them some basic...
What we rejected was spending more money on a stimulus that failed the first
time. It's a fair proposal.
We reject spending more money on
Zach
a failed...
Want.
I don't care if
Flaming
Zach said it or
liberal,
not.
Zach Want.
I don't care.
It's because, John, you don't care about anything but trying to
Franklin,
get the president.
we spent $4 trillion on his first stimulus and got nothing.
You got tons.
We got nothing.
You got a saved economy.
We had 2.1% growth, which is now cut to almost half.
What'd you have that year?
1% growth.
What'd you have that year,
Frankly,
John?
this is the... I know this is a
what
hard
did you
fact
have
for you.
the year that the stimulus was passed?
I'm going to say
Did you
this...
have any growth? You had negative growth, didn't
Franklin, I'm going to say this real slow, and I know this is a hard set of facts. This is provably the worst, slowest, and longest recovery in the economic history of the United States of America. This is the slowest,
profitable.
Are you telling for his big? You're right, for his big wigs on Wall Street.
How did the big wigs
because
become
they gave
Democrats
they gave more money
John?
to the Democrats in the last 8 years than ever Republicans. He collected more than anybody.
You know,
unbelievable.
Franklin,
totally
did he collect more money from Wall Street?
40 years.
Did he collect
40 years of Republican orthodoxy out the door?
Wait a minute.
Because it's this president.
Let me see if I can get you to understand how this works. Amazon, for example, when they were a small startup, they opposed an internet tax because the internet tax is so complicated and so hard to collect. Small startups aren't able to do it. But once they got bigger, guess what? They completely switched sides. They joined their former opponent, Walmart, and started supporting the internet tax because they have a whole department of lawyers and accountants that lets them do it. But what it does is it stifles out small mom and pop competition. So that's what this president has excelled at, is crony capitalism, where once you get big enough, the government actually helps you fight your opponent.
Now then, let's talk about Amazon. What's Amazon all about? No sales tax on the internet, right?
Oh, they're for it.
No, they're for it. That's what I just said. They were against it when they were a startup.
Guess who else is for it?
Right.
Your Republican governor is for it.
Right.
I don't support that either,
Perfect
Franklin.
example, though, of the hypocrisy that has infected the Republican Party. Every time a Republican is for something, it's a great idea, till a Democrat embraces it, and then it's a terrible
Franklin,
idea.
I said it was a bad idea the first time it was mentioned.
Your party
My
doesn't
point
say
is,
that,
Franklin,
though.
here's the point. Amazon, when it was a startup and trying to struggle against a big company like Walmart, was against the tax because it's too hard on small businesses to compete. Once it became a big business, it got in bed with the government and it now supports it. Our point as a conservative Republican is government needs to get out of the way and let small businesses be able to compete.
Why would Amazon support that now?
Because they can pay the tax.
Well, they can pay.
Franklin,
they don't pay it. The customer pays it.
You're missing the point. It's expensive to administer because you have 50 different states with 50 different taxes.
Why would they want to give up their advantage against Walmart?
Because they're on a par with Walmart. Now, you're missing the point, Franklin.
Oh, so because they're bigger,
Franklin,
they now want to pay the tax.
Let me explain this to you. If let's say there's a small mom
and pop. You
better
explain it to yourself first, because you're not making any sense.
I'm making perfect sense. I'm sorry you don't understand economics. A small mom and pop, let's say farm in Virginia that raises country hams, and they decide to go on the internet and sell country hams. When they put this kind of tax in place, that small mom and pop, they don't have the computer program, they don't have the lawyer, they don't have the accountant to be able to figure out how they pay a tax in 50 different states. It's too burdensome. It's too complicated. They can't compete. But Amazon, with their now huge corporate establishment, with banks of lawyers and banks of accountants, they don't have a problem being able to regulate that and figure that out. So what it does is it puts that small mom and pop at a competitive disadvantage to the big behemoth who is now in bed with people like Obama.
What's wrong with that statement is that the biggest business advantage that Amazon has had is that they were able to sell their products more cheaply because of the fact that the sales tax wasn't attached to it.
Franklin, I hate to break this to you, but as you get bigger, the economies of scale get your margin lower. Everything changes. Amazon, just a few years ago, was a small startup company. It's a huge behemoth now.
Here's the problem with everything that John's saying. You know who Amazon's biggest competitor is now?
Who?
For internet sales?
Who?
Walmart. Walmart is their biggest competitor now.
Franklin, the problem is they can compete with Walmart. It's the small startups that they're stifling. This president goes and claims he wants to help the little guy. What he's helping, and this is borne out by what I told you.
It would be true, John.
Wall Street CEOs have seen their income skyrocket under this president, while the middle class has seen their income actually decline.
And you think there's no connection to those two things?
I do. President Obama. If you're middle income, he's helped you decline. If you're a huge CEO, you've made a fortune.
And so when the president comes and talks completely about middle class wages,
hey,
you don't want to talk about those
doesn't do anything.
I want to change the subject just for a minute. I was reading an article here in the Chattanooga Times, and it said Obama called your Congressman Jim Cooper and recognized Mayor Burke in Chattanooga, who attended law school at the University of Chicago when Obama was there. So we finally found somebody that recognized Obama in school. It's Mayor Burke in Chattanooga. Went to law school with Obama in Chicago.
President Obama was a law school instructor at the University of Chicago when Burke was a student there.
Oh, okay. Well, at least somebody recognized him. I'm going to continue talking about the Obama plan just a moment. What about increase the minimum wage again?
Well,
part of the plan.
The minimum wage presently.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first of all, let's have some specifics. Around the country, there are lots of different minimum wages. We have a federal minimum wage, and many states have higher ones of their own.
Mm-hmm. Washington, D.C. has a higher one, don't they? Or didn't they talk about implementing one?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, they did.
New York has one.
Yeah, New York did it too.
California has one.
And how'd that work out for the poor people in the inner city?
Well, in some cases, it worked out well.
It didn't work out at all. In Washington, D.C.'s case, Walmart, who was getting ready to put hundreds of millions of dollars investment into blighted inner city neighborhoods with absolutely no prospect for employment, pulled out of the deal because of a higher minimum wage.
$12
they walked away from the deal.
Here's the argument on the counter side of this.
Okay.
The largest number of minimum wage jobs are in the fast food industry. Mm-hmm. That's the largest pool in the country. It was really interesting because they've been talking about this issue in New York City the last few weeks.
Well, they're protesting, actually picketing in Missouri, I believe.
Well, nationwide, actually, several places.
Union sponsored, by the way.
By the way, New York City also lost their drink case.
Right.
Well,
the Danny State.
McDonald's, in response to this, sent out to its employees a budget they proposed to their employees for how they get by based upon minimum wage earnings. And it had all kinds of common sense tips in it about how to save money here, save money there. Buried in the middle of it was this tip: get a second job. Well, that's great. Unless you're working
in the
40
Obama economy, which there aren't
40
any jobs for you.
Unless you're working 40
I'm glad
hours
you're
already.
recognizing that this president has failed to produce
Unless you're
jobs.
working 40 hours already and you're trying to raise your kids and try to be a good parent, that may not be the most feasible.
Do you think McDonald's primarily hires adult?
Is a
career
McDonald's
people?
job a career?
It depends on
outside
your
of
degree of
management?
education.
You know,
I imagine.
I told this story the other day, and I'll be happy to share it with you and our audiences. One time when I was very, very young, I went to Olin for a job interview, and they had about 12 of us in there, and they took us for a tour of the plant. They walked us through. They showed me these gas masks they had to put on, where they had to get down these tanks and clean these tanks out and everything. And then they walked us back into the office there, and this big old foreman said, "Now, if any of you are not willing to make a career out of this, please step forward right now." There was 12 of us there, I think, and I was the only one that stepped forward. But that's the choice you have to make on what you want to do. If you want to stay there and make that your career and make $7, $8, $9 an hour, you know it's going to be a minimum wage job. It's not going to peak out to. The only way you're going to grow at McDonald's is get into the management program.
Well, do you know how
and
you
hopefully
get
own
into,
a franchise someday.
Here's something that has been overlooked in all this, and Franklin and the liberals do this all the time. First off, they talk about this like it's a permanent fixation. You know, someone who gets a French fry machine running job is planning on being there when they're 75 years old.
Right.
The problem with it is the whole concept of upward mobility in the job market. The reason you have an entry-level job that is a crappy job at crappy pay is so you don't want to stay there. It's so you want to work hard, so you want to go back to school, so you want to get in the management program. What they're trying to do, which is what they always do, they want to make mediocrity acceptable. So we want to make you're so comfortable at your low-end job, which you have because you had no training, you've made bad decisions in life. We want to make you comfortable in your bad decisions so you don't want to increase in mobility. You don't want to move up in the job market. They will destroy the very thing that has built this country in the first place.
Well, the problem is that over time, the minimum wage becomes a lot less valuable than it was when it was established, because of increases in prices. The minimum wage that we have now, in terms of real dollars adjusted for inflation, is lower than it was 20 years ago. That's just a fact.
Franklin, do you know what the McDonald's in, I believe it's Montana, where there's a huge construction boom going on, do you know what the minimum wage or what McDonald's are paying in Montana? They're paying over $15 an hour. That's called supply and demand. In Montana, where there's a huge burgeoning, growth boom going on, there's plenty of jobs to be had.
Where there's, there's also a small population,
Franklin,
that they don't have.
You're right.
They don't have people.
Thank you for helping me make my point. When there's a scarcity of work, if this president had been able to actually grow the economy, the wages go up because McDonald's has to compete with other companies for those employees. And when there's plenty of other choices for employees to make, McDonald's has to keep paying more and more to attract them. That's called capitalism. That's how free markets actually work. And every single time you and the Democrats have pushed through a raise in the minimum wage, you have actually seen the very people you claim to care about, minorities, teenagers, young people, poor people, you've actually seen the number of jobs available to them drop.
That's
rather
totally
than go.
False.
It is not
It
totally,
is totally
false, Franklin.
It's totally false.
You have been in the habit.
You can argue about whether to raise the minimum wage.
I tell you what, Franklin, where's your facts? You just said it's false. Where's your facts?
You can't argue.
Where is your facts?
Let me finish.
Well, here's
John.
my problem, Franklin. The last 2 or 3 months, you have taken to saying things. I'll tell you something, and you'll go, "That's false." Well, Tim, prove it.
I'm trying to answer your question. Well, you won't be quiet
I want you to prove it.
All right, now calm down. Let's hear it. Prove it.
When the minimum wage goes up, that money gets returned into the economy. That's more spending that's being done. That's more businesses that are having their products bought. Where do you think that money goes? It's not going into a bank account.
Where did it come from, Franklin?
It came from the customers who bought the products.
So it came out of the economy.
So in other words,
buying products,
right,
John.
In other words, my hamburger,
you
the
didn't
price of my
create
hamburger went
anything,
up.
Franklin. That's basic economics. You didn't create anything. You moved it around, but you didn't create anything.
Actually, basic economics, John, is that when you put money into the economy, it has
where
a
do you
multiplying
get the
effect.
money? Where do you get it? You have to take it out of the economy to put it in.
But it's not dollar for dollar. It's not a break-even proposition.
So
when
in
you
other
put the
words,
money in,
you
it
agree with
multiplies.
Nancy Pelosi that food stamps actually increases the economy, helps the economy.
Food
that was-
stamps are not cash, John.
That was Nancy Pelosi's argument
Food
just
stamps
last
are
year.
not cash.
In the ward, they
She
are.
said that all this money on food stamps and welfare that actually grew the economy. Is that right?
In a limited extent,
Franklin,
yes.
you had to take it out of the economy
I got that,
in the first
John.
place.
You took it out, but you also are providing a benefit to the people who were
Franklin,
producing
can you
those
and your
goods, weren't
business
you?
hire as many people as you would like? Just across the board, hire anybody you want to hire? Or do you have an actual income budget you have to stay within?
Of course we do, John.
All right. If your budget, let's say just clerical workers, low entry workers in your business is, let's say $16 is your total amount you can spend per hour based on your business and your income. And the minimum wage is $8. You can hire 2 employees. When the government comes in and tells those 2 employees, and this is what Democrats do, you people are being taken advantage of. You deserve more than $8.
Not a
We're
taken
going to come
advantage
in.
of question.
We're going to. That's what you all
No,
say.
no, it's
You
not
say
that.
business is taking.
It's
You're not paying
either.
you.
It's that
Well,
we're
Franklin.
we're talking about people here, John, who want to work.
All right, they
number
want
one.
fine. I'm not whatever.
Good people who
fine,
want to
fine,
work.
You're right. Good.
Okay?
That's nice rhetoric on Democrats' part. But here's the
rhetoric.
effect. You come in
bad
and you
people who
tell
don't wanna
those
work.
people, if
Okay.
you'll vote for us, we'll make the people pay you $9 an hour. We'll make them. The government will make them pay you $9 an hour so that they vote for you, because that's a great sale. Hey, you're going to give me something, I'll vote for you. You get in and you do exactly what you said. You go, we're passing a new minimum wage law, and now they're going to pay you $9 an hour. Guess what you do, Franklin? You go, I've only got $16 an hour that I can budget for the positions, and it was $8 an hour and I could have 2. Now that it's $9, I can't afford $18 because I only got 16. So guess what? One of you is now either going to at best go to part-time, or probably I'm just going to let you go and I'm going to do with 1 employee. So now your rhetoric, which I'm going to help you, you did give one of them $9 an hour, but you cost the other one every dollar they earned. You cost them their job. That's what minimum wage laws do.
All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
You are listening to WOOP-LP, Cleveland, Tennessee. Whoop